Coming up on this week's edition of the Mindset Podcast, episode 151, we talk about non-lethal weapons, a 3D printer gun, the NHS Sell Off, and a student speaks out, plus a whole lot more. Here's the music.
I bid you welcome.
BBC News from BBC World.
This is an NBC News special report.
This is a CBS News special report.
Hello, a very good morning. You're watching BBC News with Carrie Gracie and Simon McCoy.
From ITN News at 10.
Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be around this wild, wacky, and sometimes disturbing world of ours. This is the Mindset Podcast, episode 151, coming at you. I'm Gareth Davis in Los Angeles, California, and joining me, sprinkled throughout the United Kingdom, we go straight immediately to Weston-super-Mare, and of course, Reeves Cook. Hey, Reeves.
Hello.
How's it going, dude?
Summer's over. It only lasted a week.
Summer is over? Are you kidding me?
I don't know where it's gone. It's just all grey outside and windy.
Wow.
And I've even still got my shorts on, waiting for it to come back.
How long did it last?
4 days.
Yow. Ouch.
And then it disappeared. And then the chemtrails came back, and then now it's grey again.
It came back again. Yeah, I hear you. Oh well, It is what it is. Let's shoot straight over to Weston-super-Mare, to Oxfordshire, and of course, Ben Emlyn-Jones. Hey, Ben.
Hi, Gareth. I'll tell you what, I wouldn't have minded being in Weston-super-Mare, actually, last week. It was so beautiful. But as Reeves has said, the whole country is now blanketed in sort of grey smog, and the chemtrails have started again. And, well, our 4-day summer is over. Mind you, that's 4 days longer than the one we had last year.
Well, it'll come back. I'm sure you'll have some nice weather as it gets closer to June, July, August, and all that stuff. It'll have to clear up for Wimbledon anyway, right? I mean they got to work it for Wimbledon.
I'll have a little word with Bill Gates, and maybe he'll sort of like do it for me.
He'll hook you up for sure.
Yeah, so, come on, Bill. Let's have some sunshine.
So last week we talked a little bit about all the crazy fires that were going on in Southern California, and they're all gone now. It's all over because it rained like crazy and put them all out. Coincidence?
Well,
that was convenient. Huh?
Bit of a boring end to the story, but I'm glad they're out. Yeah,
it rained like crazy. The skies opened up, and it rained like nobody's business. The temperature
was it just like somebody turned a tap on?
Yeah, in many ways. The temperature dropped. The weather changed abruptly. And it rained like nobody's business, and then yesterday, we had a little bit of drizzle on Thursday, and then Friday no rain. Then yesterday it was 97 degrees, and today looks like it's going to be another scorcher.
Well, what I reckon must have happened. Arnold Schwarzenegger must have paid Bill Gates his rent, And Bill said, "All right, I'll call off the heat wave."
Now please make it rain.
Call off the heat wave. Call it off.
Now.
I'll be back.
Knock, knock.
Knock, knock. Get to the chopper.
Get to the chopper
Get to the chopper. All right, let's get some business out of the way here. Let's talk a little bit about subscriptions and donations. Unfortunately, this week has been another dry week here in the house of Mindset Central. We haven't received any new subscriptions and or donations. We're hoping that will change and make things a lot better for us to keep this machine called Mindset Central rolling along. Please consider subscribing and or donating to Mindset Central if you have not done so. We push out, on average, about 17 podcasts a month, free podcasts, free content that is currently free and will always be free, but we need help. So if you do enjoy our shows, please consider subscribing. If you do subscribe, you'll obviously have access to the subscriber section, which is jam-packed to the gills with tons of behind-the-scenes content, with more on the way. Every week, I'm adding more and more to the subscriber section, and you really do want to be a member. You want to listen to some of the stuff that we're pushing in there. So really consider subscribing to MindsetCentral.com. Not only will you have access to a ton of new content, plus you'll really help us out and keep the site up, running, and active. All right, well, that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about this week's news. Now, as you all know, we never sleep here at Mindset Central. There's always something going on in the news, unfortunately, and this week is no different. Now, this week, I guess we've got the Benghazi nonsense going on. All that kind of stuff with war, destruction, craziness. But something else happened here, which Reeves brought to my attention, and I have a clip right here, and it has to do with Israel. Yeah, I'd like to play the clip. Then I'd like to talk about it with you guys and get everyone's thoughts and or opinions on this. So let's play this clip right now, and we'll talk about it in just a few moments.
First it was the bullets, then the tear gas, and now this.
It's probably the worst smelling substance you will ever smell in your entire life.
You stink, you bad people. I don't have a home. It stinks. You made it smell. I have nowhere to go. I can't even see my son. You sprayed him.
Developed by Israeli security forces, this foul-smelling liquid is used to disperse Palestinian demonstrations, and it's proving to be pretty effective.
If it hits you in the eyes, it could be painful, and it could cause redness, and if swallowed, it can cause stomach problems. It's important to state that this material has never been used against Israeli Jews in only Jewish demonstrations.
It's the answer to a years-old search by the Israeli military for an alternative to tear gas to control crowds.
The skunk is an anti-riot means that we employ in order to live up to our philosophy of containing riots at a safe distance while also ensuring the safety of everyone involved.
But those on the receiving end claim it's being used as collective punishment.
It's sprayed not at stone throwers, but generally simply at people participating in non-violent marches, and very often is that the skunk is sprayed at homes, at gardens, at people who are not participating at all in any demonstration.
Take Atala Tamimi, for example. He shows me the damage to his house from the so-called skunk. His wife was forced to throw their 2-year-old daughter from an upstairs balcony to safety below after the windows of her bedroom shattered.
The Israeli forces come from this side and the sewage car stops there. It starts spraying while at the same time the soldiers throw the tear gas on the houses.
Every Friday, it's usual to see clashes here in the West Bank village of Nabi Saleh between Israeli soldiers and Palestinian demonstrators. Villagers claim a nearby Israeli settlement is being built on their land. As you enter Nabi Saleh, this is the sign that welcomes you. Dozens of tear gas canisters that have been collected just over the past few months. A stark reminder of the excessive force the Israeli army uses against this small village. It remains unclear what's actually inside the liquid.
This water's very dirty and has a very bad smell. Once, we left the house for 3 weeks because of it.
It's water-based and has various ingredients that create a very pungent smell, but it is household ingredients as well.
Whatever it is, the one thing both sides agree on, you would not want to be sprayed with it. Paul Islia, RT, Nabi Saleh in the West Bank.
This is like a non-lethal weapon. You know, that's the kind of terminology that's popped up in the last, 20, 25, maybe 30 years. Non-lethal weapons to disperse crowds, to get people off the streets. It's interesting, in that clip they said it's used against peaceful protesters. Now, using non-lethal weapons on peaceful protesters, I think is pretty fucked up. It's something that... I don't know, man. I mean, it drives me crazy that they can do this to people who are peacefully protesting. They mentioned here about their homes. They were spraying their homes, their gardens. This is insane. What are your thoughts, gentlemen? Let me start with Ben. What do you think about this nonsense?
Well, again, you said it, non-lethal weapons. It's a buzzword that's used a lot nowadays to describe weapons that have actually killed several dozen people at least, and that's according to official reports. Tasers, for example, have taken many lives. They're the most dangerous and lethal of these non-lethal weapons. And the thing about once a weapon is classified as non-lethal, it can be used in circumstances when other weapons couldn't. You can use a non-lethal weapon where you couldn't drop bombs or use bullets. Now, for instance, in Northern Ireland, the security forces used to use plastic bullets, which again killed many people.
Right.
Many people. These were supposedly non-lethal bullets, but they killed lots of people. But now, again, I mean, this is a riot control mechanism, right? Apparently. And they use it on rioters. But like you said, they use it in many other circumstances. They use it as a form of terrorism. It's emotional terrorism.
Exactly.
And they say it's non-lethal, but then, as I've just said, a lot of non-lethal weapons have killed people, and this well could kill somebody. For example, when asked what this actual substance was that they were smelling, the man just says it's water-based, and we include some household ingredients.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? That's exactly the same thing that the people doing the fracking have said about the substance they inject into the ground.
Really?
To break up the rocks. They say it's water-based, contains household ingredients. It's like it's a get debt-free clause.
Yeah.
These household ingredients include things that contain hypochlorite, sulfur, aluminium, all kinds of toxic materials are put into household ingredients. It's not where they are, it's how they're used. Rat poison contains household ingredients.
Exactly, yeah.
How do we know that this is not going to do long-term damage to the people and the environment of Palestine?
Well, they were saying that the stench that comes off this thing. They said in that clip, this is the worst smell you could ever smell. It's revolting, What pops into my head when I hear things like this and is like, who are they to do that? It drives me crazy where somebody's trying to enforce their will on somebody else. What's to stop them from doing it back? It's like, it drives me crazy, this kind of authoritarian kind of mentality. You have to do this. If you don't do this, these are the consequences.
It's typical of Israel, though, isn't it? They believe they have the Israelis, I mean, from the Zionist lobbies around the world, have just basically put their stamp into this place in the Middle East. It has no fixed borders, and they can do what the hell they like and justify it.
Yeah, nobody says a word. What do you think what's going on here, Reeves?
Well, I agree with you two. It's just it's laughable in a way because they do what they want and there's no consequence. Now, I'm just wondering if if you put this into what's happening in Syria at the moment, and everyone's saying, "Oh, but the rebels have now used chemical weapons, and the government forces have used chemical weapons. This is why we must go and invade and take to get rid of these people." But you've got another country that's using chemical weapons because it's household products and household chemicals. You don't know what's in it. It could be bleach. It could be anything. That's a chemical weapon. They say this is another thing that I really scratch my head really hard when I hear the name non-lethal weapon. Weapon. Yeah. Non-lethal weapon.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Those words don't go together. Non-lethal and weapon, they just don't go together.
Well, that's the thing. It's like it's Orwellian doublespeak, right?
Yeah.
It's the whole war is peace, all that stuff. Non-lethal weapon. It's the same deal. It's implanting these kind of images in your head, which doesn't make any sense, but you accept.
I'm just wondering what would happen maybe in America or England if they used this skunk liquid on protesters here. What would be the reaction? Although they have used similar, what they call crowd control, sprays on peaceful protesters.
Well, see,
and some individuals were prosecuted for doing that.
What they do, though, is they over here. I mean, every protest over here, with people out there marching in the street, they're going out there peacefully, They don't go out there thinking, okay, we're going to go down this street and then we're going to cause a riot or we're going to start some shit or do. No, this is a peaceful protest. So what the authorities want to do is they want to make it violent. So they send people into the crowd,
Definitely. That happened in London.
To get things going.
Definitely. Yeah, that happened in London with the, wasn't it the student riots, Ben, when they had with alleged police officers with no numbers on their shoulders covered up?
Oh, there's been several instances where strange people have turned up. Where strange people, and now at the Seattle protests, these people were positively identified as serving police officers.
Yeah.
They were wearing just the same type of clothes. They were wearing protesters' clothes with the banners and things, and they started hurling missiles and things around the place, and broken bottles, bricks, you name it.
Yeah.
Before you know it, of course, everyone kicks off.
What the protesters should do though is that they should show up dressed as police officers.
Yeah.
No, I mean serious. They should.
Honestly,
all the protesters when they go to protest, all of them should show up in full police riot gear.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Just because I mean, if they're going to do it to the protesters, then why don't the protesters do it to them? Or at least, all right, maybe not all the protesters, but how about a quarter of the protesters show up in full police riot gear?
Mm. Well, no, I reckon whatever happens, I reckon they will. You can try and you can outmaneuver them when you try and outmaneuver them, but it's going to be an uphill struggle to prevent some situation breaking out in which the British police will find some way of using this non-lethal weapons themselves.
Yeah.
They've already got much access to more weapons than they used to.
I just had an interesting thought, though. Maybe you guys can chime in on this. Is in regard to like protests and us and them and dividing and drawing lines. It's all done through the use of costumes, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When you see a policeman on the street, the only reason you know he's a policeman and not just some fucking retard who's just walking down the street walking his dog or some shit is because he's wearing a costume that lets you know that he's a police officer, right?
Uh-huh.
And when a war takes place, back in World War II, when we fought the Germans and the Japanese, when we were fighting, we knew that guy over there was a Nazi because he had like a Nazi uniform on, right? If he was dressed in civilian clothes, then he's a civilian, or if he was dressed as a British officer or an American officer, well, he's one of the Allies, right?
Yeah.
It's like the costume decides whose side you're on. So why don't these people that are protesting or working against the powers that be use that to their advantage?
Well, I think in general, protests today in today's modern society, protests there's no point protesting about. There's no point nailing a bit of wood to another bit of wood and writing something on it because you can't change anything by walking down the street waving a bit of wood.
Right, if you muddy the waters,
yeah,
and you don't know who's who. Well, let me put it this way to you. Just imagine it's 1943. There's a massive offensive going on where the German army is pushing forward into whatever the fuck country, and the Allies are pushing forward into whatever the fuck country. What if the German people, the fucking Nazis said, okay, you know what, for this offensive, we're all going to dress like American soldiers?
Well, a lot of
wow.
Germans actually did. They actually did. Some Americans were taught to speak perfect English and perfect American, and they had groups of German. I don't know if they were SS or they were crack troops. They could speak perfect English, and they would wear the uniforms, and they would infiltrate.
Yes, and in fact, the World War II is the event which triggered the start of World War II was actually the German invasion of Poland.
Yeah.
Right now, Hitler decided to invade Poland because he said that Poland attacked Nazi Germany's eastern border. What happened was the Polish troops assaulted a German border post, or several German border posts. But those were actually SS officers who'd sneaked into Poland, put on Polish uniforms, and had attacked their post.
Right.
It was a false flag. So it's funny you should bring this up. It's very, very true. There's this deception, which we talk about in terms of 9/11 and things like that, or these protesters, these police infiltrating the protesters. You know, it's nothing new. It's been going on.
Oh,
for
of course
ages.
not. No, this thing has been happening forever. But what I'm thinking is, why don't the tables turn? I mean, we hear so many stories, and I think there's one great story on Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11, which is a movie that, you know, love it or hate it. There's some good moments in the movie.
Yeah.
There's a few moments where he's interviewing people who, after 9/11, after the event, they decided to have a discussion group where they would discuss. They would, like, so, you know, every Wednesday night, come over to my place and we'll sit down and we'll drink coffee and we'll talk about the government and its policies and what's going wrong with the country. And they had, you know, like maybe 10, 15 people that every Wednesday they'd all show up and sit down in this dude's living room and yap about the government, blah, 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 Bush and blah, you know, all this stuff. And they find out that like two or three of the new members that had shown up, you know, 6 months into it, were government spies who were sent in to document what they were talking about and you know, work undercover and all this shit.
Well, you know, I guarantee you that any group of people, even down to on YouTube, where you've maybe got 50 or 60,000 followers, and you're someone that's speaking out against, you know, the government, and you've got a large group of people behind you that are subscribed to you, I guarantee that even on that level, there's a certain number of people that are subscribed to you that are watching you, who are working for a government agency.
Yeah, it's called, was it PSYOPs?
PSYOP, watching what you're saying and, you know, and seeing, you know, what does he know? What does he really know? You know, or whatever.
Or join to stir shit up or start stuff and things like that.
Yeah, with any political.
Trolls.
This is one of the reasons. I don't want to bring up the name, but one of the reasons I think that Charlie Veitch was arrested before the Queen's Jubilee event, because he's got a lot of protesters and he was going to go there to do something. So what do? They put him in a cell for 8 hours, so he's out of the picture.
Right.
You know, you cut the head off the snake.
No, yeah, I know, but that's still pre-crime, though. I got major issues with that.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is they're vetting people, they're watching people. You know, they're part of the club, and then they can. You know, it's like when you've got these large political groups that start to become powerful. You usually got other people that are within that political group that are working for other political interests.
Right, but you can't arrest or prosecute someone for a crime that hasn't happened yet.
Well, they didn't charge him with anything, did they? In the end,
it doesn't matter. They held him. They held him for for no reason. That's insane.
Well, allegedly, the reason that they took him in was for questioning over something else, but it's all
BS.
It's all
BS.
Dutch, really.
I mean, if he had gone to the Queen's thing and acted like a maniac and caused some shit, yeah, okay, arrest him. But after the fact, but not before. That's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I'm not a fan of Charlie Veitch. Obviously, you know, he's gone his different way and he's got a lot of problems, which I'm concerned about. But I mean, he doesn't deserve to be locked up for something he hasn't done. But what's interesting, what you guys were talking about before, was you were talking about because we digress a little bit, haven't we? But
well, that's the nature of the show. We can't. The main topic will spin off into different areas, but that's cool. Yeah.
But what happened was you were talking about people within the truth movement who were working for the other side, who were sort of like controlled opposition. There are some very, very prominent members of the 9/11 truth movement. Again, I don't want to mention any names, but there's some very, very prominent people who are some of the leading lights who have been named as possibly being involved in controlled opposition. Definitely.
Yeah.
Certainly, certain people have, for instance, have given a lot of Dr. Judy Wood, for example, who's one of the people I think is very, very important. She's done an awful lot of work in trying to assess what has happened to those Twin Towers to make them fall down.
Let me ask you a quick question. This is way off.
She's had a lot of hostility thrown her way by people really I think should know better. Let me think better of. I'm
going to throw something out here now, and this is so off topic, but I have to do it because I watched a video with Judy Wood the other day where she was talking about 9/11 and the beams from space and all this stuff. But Dr. Judy Wood, is that a dude?
It's a woman.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
I will admit, she does appear a little bit tomboyish.
That's a dude. I'm telling you, that's a dude who had his dick cut off.
Oh my god! We're talking about where did the towers go, not where did the go.
Well,
I'm sorry. I had to go because I watched the video the other day, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, is that a dude?
Yeah, she's actually. I mean, I've met her. I've met her. And,
I'm sorry.
She's a girl. She's definitely.
We majorly digress here, but I mean, it was on my mind. I had to say it. Okay, let's move on. Yeah. So I mean, interesting stuff, though. I mean, about the towers and everything, and infiltration of many groups. But I don't understand why the reverse isn't done, or maybe it is done. I don't know.
You mean we infiltrate them?
Sure. Why not?
Well, there's some people. I mean, some people have said things like, "Why don't I try and get into the Illuminati to try and control them all? Why don't I go and work as an agent in the police or whatever?" The problem, I suppose, would be.
Unfortunately, getting into the Illuminati isn't like cutting out a little coupon in the back of a comic and joining the Famous Five Club. You know what I mean? It's not that easy.
It's a little bit different. You have to be the bloodline and the blah 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 and all and have billions of dollars and all that stuff. But at low levels, I mean, like the example I gave of like protesting and showing up in a police uniform or showing up in a suit, because when you look at protesters, right? You know, they're all like, scraggly beards, long hair, 9/11 Truth T-shirts, ripped jeans, and there's a kind of profile. When you see a bunch of people protesting, you're not surprised to see this kind of person protesting.
Yeah.
Right. But what if everyone was to show up dressed very smart, as if they're working in the city of London or going to work in an office somewhere?
No, I totally agree. I do agree with what you're saying. If it's all about organisation, it's all about cohesion and being a looking at things in a slightly different way to think, well, how can we go about this in a more positive, rather than going with a bit of wood and a pair of ripped jeans and
to change the visual, because we key on visual stuff, right? We key on uniforms, the whole connotation of a uniform. When you see someone dressed a certain way, it's not just they're wearing a certain jacket or a certain whatever. It brings a whole lot of other baggage with it, right?
Yeah.
So when you see a guy protesting in his T-shirt and his unkept hair and his beard and he's holding you automatically bring a lot of thoughts ready to go, right? You already make up your mind about that person. You've already judged them completely. You've made a backstory for them and everything because of the way they look. So what I'm saying is, if we change the way they look, you change the backstory. You change the whole vibe of the event. You change everything about it. You turn it on its ass, so that the normal ways to deal with these kind of things is kind of out the window.
Yeah. Well, I reckon on a lower level. I mean, you're right, Reeves, about the Illuminati. I mean, I was just sort of like joking. Obviously, you can't get to the Illuminati, but I mean, on a lower level, I mean, it is technically possible for somebody to infiltrate, for instance, senior military, government, and police agencies. I mean, that's not only possible; it has been done. I mean, when the Cold War ended, I mean, even before the end of the Cold War, it came out about how successful the Soviet intelligence service had been in penetrating. I mean, they had literally, completely and utterly, there's an endemic infiltration of some areas of government in the West. I mean, the Cambridge spies, the Cambridge spies are unbelievable, because I mean, they were. They got right to the top of the British intelligence agencies when they were working for the KGB. And not only that, I mean, there's a guy called Peter Wright who wrote a book, a very famous book called Spycatcher. He accuses the former head of MI5, Sir Roger Hollis, of being a Soviet agent. The same goes for the United States. I mean, they really... Now, if the KGB can do it, could an organised sort of like truth movement intelligence agency kind of
I think that to get into those kind of levels, it would be extremely difficult.
The only person that I know that actually was put something together on all the intelligence together on all the government officials and their backgrounds was Bill Cooper, who was obviously shot.
Yeah.
Yes, back in the day, but he was the only person I know of that had a dossier on all the people in government and who they were, their backgrounds, what they were up to, and he had his, this massive information about, the government people and what they, who they were. And, obviously, he got into a gunfight and he got shot. But, it's...
Just before 9/11, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, he said a lot of things back then that are true today, that have actually come into paths to being.
Right.
And it's... you're right. I mean, there obviously are other organisations around that, look at the government, look who the people are, look at their backgrounds and what their motivations are, and keep some sort of record on who they are. But I don't think that it's done in such a way that today you've got this kind of
there has to be a way to kind of level the playing field, right? Because right now, they have all the secrecy, right? We can't know nothing about them, right? Yeah. If we want to dig into someone's background in politics, forget it. You're going to get stonewalled. You're not going to find nothing. You might even get arrested or whatever. But
there's another problem as well.
But if they wanted to look into your background, that's fucking trivial. No problem.
There's another problem is as soon as you go undercover in a certain location, in a certain role, it's very, very easy. You're in a very vulnerable position of becoming like a double agent, either intentionally or unintentionally, being used by your enemy.
Sure.
As a reflection. I mean, in the Cold War, there's lots of examples of double agents.
Yeah.
Even triple agents.
Exactly.
Or quadruple agents. I think it was 1 or 2 quadruple agents.
Yeah, no, that's true, and and it would be very difficult not to switch either. And we've said many times on this show, a lot of people who get into politics initially get in for the right reasons, right? They get into politics because they want to change things. They want to make things better. But as they move up the food chain and they start to see everything functions and they start making lots and lots of money, suddenly those lofty dreams of helping the community and our country are out the fucking window.
Well, it's biggest example we can use on that is some of the recent hackers that have done certain hacks on big corporations that now end up working for the top head of their security.
Well, look at it this way, right? We're here yapping like this about this stuff. I mean, if somebody came to you with a very large check, how much would it cost for you to shut the fuck up and never touch this stuff again?
Yeah. I mean, somebody would come along and say, "Well, we don't want you to change. Just keep us informed about what's going on."
Yeah, I mean, it's a sad it's the way the society is structured. Money talks.
It's very, very easy. It's extremely easy to fall into that kind of thing without knowing it, or without even quite understanding what's going on. I mean, there's it's not just they don't go up to you and they say, "Hey guys, do you mind portraying your cause and becoming one of us? Here's a check." They don't just do that. They send someone to make friends with you who will be nice to you. They may send an attractive lady to come and sort of seduce you or whatever. I mean, they do, and there's all kinds of crafty ways that spies use. I mean, read any spy novel. I mean, a lot of these spy novels are written by former intelligence agents like Ian Fleming and all these other people. Now, they do this sort of thing, and then before you know it, you just become. It's because you have to, when you go undercover and playing a certain role, you have to look, you have to talk, you have to speak the language of the enemy, you have to look like them, and of course you have to think like them. And things, once you start thinking like them, it's very easy to forget who you were before.
Sure. Yeah, we have like I remember many years ago I used to work for a company that used to provide help desk services to other companies. So what would happen was, say company A said, "Look, we need somebody on site to fix our computers." So we would employ somebody who works for us, Company B, to go and work on site at Company A, helping fix all their stuff. So we send this guy over. He shows up at 8 in the morning and leaves at 5 in the evening working at Company A. But Company B is paying his paychecks and is actually employing him. But we found that over time, the person who is employed by Company B but working at Company A would flip. In other words, they would stop thinking of themselves working for Company B, even though Company B is giving them paychecks, and start thinking that they're working at Company A. In other words, their allegiance would be to Company A because They're spending so much time there. They're there every day. Hey, good morning. How's it going? Hey, blah, blah, blah. And they'd flip.
Yeah. I mean, if you were, for instance, during the Cold War, if you were a CIA or MI5 officer who sent behind enemy lines, playing the role of a Soviet diplomat or something, firstly, you'd have to speak perfect Russian. You'd be taught to speak perfect Russian. You'd also be taught about Marxist-Leninism and how to talk about it like it's something wonderful and just say, look, just pretend, all right? But once you got in there, and for maybe a year or two, you've been talking like this and acting like this.
Yeah,
you might think, who was I before?
Yeah, totally.
Was I really that person before I came in?
I think,
and that's how double agents are created.
Yeah,
I think a classic, one of the classic Russian tricks was the honey trap, wasn't it? To get an agent into a position of with women, and they would film and record him, and then they would use that against him, and they'd say, "Right now, you work for us." Or this, the certain people you don't want to know would see this film or whatever, So it's all that kind of espionage, It's like Tinker was it? What was the series we had over
Tinker
here?
Tailor Soldier Spy.
Soldier Spy. That's it.
Len Dayton. That's right.
Right.
Yeah, they had that kind of
Smiley,
spy.
George Smiley. Yeah.
Smiler and all that lot. They remade it, didn't they? They remade it into a feature film, but it's that kind of that kind of era of kind of espionage and spying and double agents and very kind of watching your back. And I'd say Ben's correct. You'd have to be fully versed in their culture and their language and
everything,
their nuances, and to totally fit in.
All right, let's change gears here. Let's move on. I got another great story here, which kind of sort of ties into the whole spy thing, because we've seen this kind of thing a million times in spy movies, and that's a spy who manufactures his own gun. Well, something very similar has been happening in real life. Have a listen to this.
Technology could allow people to manufacture their own plastic guns at home using machines known as 3D printers. Right now, those printers are expensive, but that could change. And Eyewitness News reporter Rudibe Shabazi is live in Pasadena to tell us why some lawmakers are very worried. Rudibe.
Good afternoon. Well, we're at a place called These Makers in Pasadena, where they don't make the guns, but they do make the 3D printer. So we just wanted to give you an idea of what they look like, how they work. This is a 3D printer right here, and basically what it does is drop hot plastic, lay it down layer by layer until the object is actually formed. And while lawmakers are very concerned about the technology, the people here say it's overblown. Lawmakers are speaking out about the capability of making plastic guns on a 3D printer like this one, and in theory not set off a metal detector. They're also concerned anyone with access to a 3D printer could make a gun with information available online. Today, State Senator Leland Yee of San Francisco talked about his plans to make it illegal in California to use 3D technology to make a plastic gun, although the legislation has not yet been introduced.
Literally, you can have someone get on a plane, pass a security, and do some horrible damage to innocent individuals.
Senator Chuck Schumer of New York has also been vocal on the issue.
A terrorist, someone who's mentally ill, a spousal abuser, a felon, can essentially open a gun factory in their garage.
How's that national conversation going?
Cody Wilson and his group, Defense Distributed, have been working on making the guns with 3D printers for over a year. They show them off in this YouTube video.
It was always the goal. The entire goal from the beginning was, can you print a gun on a 3D printer? Can you do it?
But it's not just lawmakers who are worried. So is the LAPD.
We would certainly be opposed to anybody manufacturing weapons in their home, whether it's, getting pieces of wood or pipes and putting them together, which occurs frequently, or this new technology where you can actually produce it using a computer and a 3D printer.
But President of D's maker, Diego Porquere, says the focus should be on the people trying to make the guns, not on the technology itself, and that restrictions won't solve anything.
If they ban that with 3D printers, they might as well do CNC machining, drills, jigsaws, whatever. Anything that cuts metal, makes anything, you've got to restrict all that too.
And here are some of the more non-threatening items made by those 3D printers, little knickknacks and toys. So this is something that's typically made here. And again, the lawmakers have not yet introduced proper legislation. They're just kind of throwing out the idea, expressing their concern about the capability of making weapons with this new technology. Reporting live in Pasadena, Rudibe Shabazi, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Rudibe.
So there you go, guys. You can actually print a gun now. This has been pretty big news over here for the last week, where everyone's because 3D printers are becoming very, very popular. And even though they are kind of expensive right now, they're getting cheaper and cheaper all the time, and probably within the next 5 years, it'll be kind of trivial to purchase, set up, and use a 3D printer at home. So what are your thoughts on this? Reeves, what do you think?
Well, there's a couple of corrections I'd like to make to the news reports because, I just want to give people all the information. At the moment, you can print a 3D weapon. There are schematics online that you can download to print out a pistol, semi-automatic rifle, like I think it's an MR16 or something. It's like a semi-automatic rifle. But the thing is, one of the guys there said they could get on a plane and they wouldn't. At the moment, you need to have a firing pin and a metal barrel.
I was just going to talk about that.
Plastic and make a plastic firing pin.
In this clip, though, this is what really leapt out at me when he says this.
A plane.
When he go, I got it right here. Listen to this.
Have someone get on a plane, pass a security, and do some horrible damage to innocent individuals.
So I don't see how that is relevant. Get on a plane, and why is the plane even why is he even mentioning fucking planes?
I don't know.
He's going to take a 3D printer on the fucking plane and then wait 8 hours while it prints a gun? I mean, what is this, a mental case?
All right, which is another 15 minutes.
We're just going to land in Heathrow Air. Could you tell the pilot to circle for another 2 hours? My printer's almost done.
The actual printer device, the plastic printer, the machine. When you buy one, okay, you have to have it registered at a location, and you can only leave it at that location.
Why?
And you can only print from that location.
Why?
You can't stick it in a truck and drive around. I'm just going to pop it on the road, do some printing. It has to be at one location. So there are certain laws already in place.
Why, though? I don't understand that. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, that's the way it is.
Why?
There is a documentary out there for anybody that wants to learn more.
So wait, let me get this straight. So I'm like, I got 10 grand, and I want to buy a 3D printer. I buy it, and I set it up at home, and suddenly I can't fucking move it. I got to register it.
You've got to register it, and it has to
Fuck
be there.
That's lunacy.
Well, that's
insane.
I don't know if that's the law in every state, but the guy that's printing these weapons, he has it in a warehouse, and it can't move from that warehouse.
That's fucking crazy, dude.
Also, obviously, you need a metal firing pin and a metal barrel, and obviously, you need ammunition. It doesn't fire plastic bullets; it fires real ammunition.
Yeah.
But yeah, later on, as technology evolves, the firing pin and the barrel, it might change, and they will have a totally invisible weapon to metal detectors.
You can't.
But the fact is that, do you think that's going to stop criminals from
this kind of technology? You can't uninvent it. It's done. It's out there, and it's all. You can create all the fucking laws till the cows come home. This is not going away. End of story. Ben, what's your take?
Well, this is interesting stuff because as you said, this technology will evolve. These things are going to get smaller, more portable. They're going to be this dissemination of them to the point where they can't be registered anymore. But to me, is that a problem? Because
I don't think so.
No, a lot of these things could be very, very useful.
Sure.
A gun is a fairly simple mechanical device, but there's talk of printing electronic circuit boards and things like that. And,
you can print.
They can be attached to. You can actually print metallic objects because there is an experimental version which attaches to a forge, and you can actually a forge with molds and things like that, and you can actually print bronze and steel objects.
Well, but they're using this a lot for like say you have a car that's a 60-year-old car, and you need a part that you either can't find, or if you do find it, it'll cost you a fortune. With a 3D printer, you can just print it.
Yeah. Now, there's another area that concerns me is the Big Brother agenda that might be behind this, because he talks about taking a gun on a plane. Well, I was told, that the thing is, non-metallic firearms and non-metallic weapons are nothing new. They've been around for a while. And, for instance, the underpants bomber, the Christmas Day underpants bomber on that plane, he didn't have any metallic objects on it. He had explosives in his underpants, apparently.
Right, yes.
Now, we were told that the big X-ray machines they make you walk through, or the very intimate pat-downs you get where someone shoves fingers up your bottom, things like that, in the TSA lounge, right, in the TSA office. I thought that's what was, non-metallic dangerous objects. I thought this is what they were meant to prevent.
Well, it's been.
So what are they
proved
saying now?
It's been.
We need
proved now
more?
that full body scanners don't work. If you wear an object close enough to your body, it can't be seen.
So now we need more security measures.
No, I mean these body scanners and the touching up. I mean that all that is security theater, right? It's nonsense. It's bullshit. It's theater. Let's make people believe that we're doing something to prevent this shit. The truth is, these fucking maniacs that went on planes with underpants bombs and whatever the fuck, they were led on. It was a part of a plan. I mean, they were whisked through. They didn't even go through fucking security.
When the Olympics were on. When the Olympics were on, and we had huge influx of people coming over from all around the world, there were so many people coming in to the country, some of the major airports and the Olympic Village that had these X-ray scanners. Their scanners were switched off to let the people in quickly.
Yeah.
So what's the point of that?
It's all pointless, dude. It's bullshit. It's fucking nonsense.
This is where I think this may be used as part of the agenda to maybe have more security measures. You may need a license to fly on a plane. You may not need to be on a database to fly on a plane. Well, you already have to give your fingerprints in when you enter the United States.
Yeah, that's true. That started.
And this could be tasked. I mean, I was going to bring in a clip about the Queen's speech. I forgot to send it to you. I was going to send you a clip about the Queen's speech, but
well, we can talk about it. What happened with the Queen's speech?
Well, the Queen's just the Queen did her state opening of Parliament a few days ago, and she does this every year, where she sits there in her regalia with all the people, all the lords and everyone around her. One of the things she says was there's a strategy for this government, which is this year, which is the tackling of mass immigration. And they're going to do it. And one of the reasons they want to do this, of course, a lot of the British people are clamouring for this. They want the government to do something about mass immigration because they just found out there's 320,000 illegal immigrants in this country. So everyone's going, what are we going to do about it? Well, the Queen has proposed.
Nothing.
Yeah, the Queen has proposed, well, her government has proposed, she said, that they'll introduce legislation to mean that it's much, much more difficult to operate or function in society without having official identification.
Interesting.
In other words, you need to keep flashing your passport wherever you go. You'll need to, when you're applying for jobs, when you're applying for benefits. I've been warning about this kind of thing for years now.
Yeah.
And I predicted this for a very, very long time. And the idea is to make it so difficult to get by without being on some kind of database that you will not be able to function. And then we will have the database state with the full approval of the British people by default. And this is what concerns me. I think this what you've just talked about here with the 3D printing and air travel may be another part of that agenda.
See, that might be I hear what you're saying, Ben, but I don't know if that would apply to air travel, because ultimately air travel is a business. I mean, these airlines they exist to make money. They're not flying people all over the world for fun or out of altruism or to make life better for everyone. They're doing it because they want to make lots and lots of money. And once you start restricting it to the point where, I'm not going to fly, fuck that. Look at the hoops I got to jump through to get on this plane. Fuck that, I'm not going. That's going to affect their business. So there might be issues there. They can only take it so far. They can't go too far where it becomes a huge pain in the ass to fly.
Well, luckily, that's actually already starting. I mean, several of the smaller airlines who've been badly hit by this, the short-haul flyers like Ryanair and Swiss Air and Aer Lingus, there have been kind of rebellions in those airlines because they're losing customers because of this.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that Aer Lingus does fly transatlantic flights, but it also does a lot of domestic Irish and British flights. Swiss Air also is generally European flights, and they have been hit really badly by this. Also, several of the trade unions involved in air travel, for instance, BOLPA, the British Airline Pilots Association, they've stuck their heels in now because they wanted to they were trying to force all airline employees to carry the national identity card when it was going to be brought out. And luckily, the people who actually work there saw through this and they said, we don't want this. We really don't want to be treated like criminals.
Yeah, it's I mean, right now, to fly, it is a hassle, but it's not so much of a hassle where you're not going to do it.
There are some areas, of course, where, if you're flying long haul, for instance, like when I went to see my brother in Australia, if I chose not to fly, it'd be extremely difficult to get there. It would take a very long time.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so
you have to take a passenger ship, there's very, very few passenger ships now that travel
that way, right,
distance. Yeah, and they're very expensive. And, of course, they take a couple of weeks to get there.
Exactly.
And so there are some circumstances where people will have to either fly or stay at home.
Yeah, or not go. We'll see how it plays out eventually. But I think you are correct in what you're saying, though. We are going down that path where you are going to need to have your papers, please, in order to survive.
This is what they want. This is where they've been heading, and I've been predicting this for a very, very long time. They really are heading that way.
You think the Queen's going to have papers?
Somehow, just as with bedroom tax, I think we were talking about this the other week. As with the bedroom tax system, I think she's going to somehow find some way to wiggle out of it.
Because isn't she like a German or something? Isn't she like an immigrant?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, and that's just her earthly body. I mean, she's
changed her name to Windsor, but way back.
Yeah.
Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. Yeah, it was originally.
Yeah.
Germans.
All right, let's take a break here for a minute or two, and then we'll come back with more topics and more show. We'll be right back.
You can now hear all of the Mindset Central podcast while on the go with the Stitcher Smart Radio app. On-demand news, talk, and more on your mobile phone. The latest episodes at Mindset Central are always available for you. No syncing needed and no memory or storage wasted. Available on your iPhone, iPad, Android phones, and beyond. Downloading is easy. Go to Stitcher.com or check out your app store. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to MindsetCentral.com.
You're listening to the Mindset Network.
The Mind Tech Podcast is your weekly dose of tech, privacy, security, and conspiracy. Each week, the Mind Tech Podcast will talk about the very latest tech news and the continued threats to internet freedom. Hosted by Garrett Davis and Joe Resington. You can download and subscribe to the Mind Tech Podcast at MindsetCentral.com.
back. That was the Thermals there with the Sunset, which you can hear on the latest edition of the Mindset Radio Hour with Joe Dunn. The latest episode, I think, is episode 35. Go ahead and check that out. You can get some more music, some more alternative music that you won't find on your regular radio dial. Check that out if you get a chance. All right, guys, let's see what else we got going on here. So Reeves brought a story to my attention, which I was completely unfamiliar with, but I want to throw it out there because it is interesting in a kind of sad way. Now, I grew up in the UK, so I'm well aware of what the NHS is, or maybe was, but I guess things are changing there with the National Health Service in the UK, and it's changing, I guess, on the down low, if I'm correct. So I have a clip here, and then I really want to get your guys' take on it, and then maybe we can talk about healthcare in general.
It's just a hospital, right? Nothing unusual about it at all from this angle. But this isn't just any old hospital, it's the physical embodiment of Conservative plans to privatise parts of the health service here. Hinchingbrook made history when it became the first NHS hospital to be managed privately, breaking with the entire concept of a state-run health service which had existed since the end of the Second World War. The Conservative-led government here would argue that privately run institutions tend to be leaner, offer better value for money than bureaucratic, cumbersome, state-run ones. But the onus on privatised companies is to prove exactly who they're accountable to. After all, this hospital may be paid for by the taxpayer, but it's owned by a company now whose investors include hedge funds, and they're very significant donors to the Conservative Party. It's run by a group called Circle Health, whose website makes clear that its main investors are these finance houses and hedge funds. Publicly available documents show that the men who invest in Circle Health have also donated nearly $2 million to the Conservative Party. We wrote twice to Circle without reply. This principle runs true right across the private sector, with most recipients of big government contracts also being political donors. NHS campaigners don't like it at all.
The NHS Cambridgeshire is paying for all the operations and all the facilities and all the procedures.
Taxpayers' money.
Taxpayers' money. Taxpayers' money that's being paid for all the procedures that happen here. They are paying the taxpayers' money Circle, so obviously any profits from that go into Circle. Now, if those profits are then being used to pay the Conservative Party, that's an interesting circle of money and the way the taxpayers' money is being used then to finance political parties.
If there's any profit out of it, it would go to the hedge funds or other financial institutions that are the investors.
And they'll make another donation to the government of the day.
This is Conservative Party conference, where this week the headline has been about another $15 billion in cuts to public services. The view from here is that political donations are normal and there is little chance of a conflict of interest.
I'll tell you one thing. I'm not a minister, but if I was a minister, I'm flipping sure that when ministers are given the choices as to what they should choose, the choices comes. I've been in the army, and when you're given options, there's a favoured option, and a minister really would have to be very, very clever.
Win fair and square.
And I think it'll have to be one fair and square. They can donate all they like.
The Conservative-led government here has offered Circle Health a 10-year, $15 billion contract for Hinchingbrook Hospital. The same is happening with many other contractors across hospitals in Britain. The deals are all underwritten by the taxpayer. In an age of historic cuts to public services and the population getting poorer, these are the people who benefit from privatised Britain. Lawrence Lee, Al Jazeera, Eastern England.
All right, Reeves, I'm gonna start with you on this one to get the ball rolling. So, what's your take on that?
Well, it's just how underhanded and deceitful these people in power really are, and the way that they go about things, very, very silently, very covertly. A lot of this information would never have come out if it wasn't for certain individuals whistleblowing and getting information published in the public arena. Most people, unfortunately, in the general public, are completely unaware of how and what is going on when it comes to the National Health Service. It's not only the health service, as it's stated in the report, there are other areas that are having this done as well. It's the It's not just the point of what they're trying to do, it's the point of how they do it and how that money works its way around back into the government's pocket. Also, I want to state that a lot of people in the current government, once these plans are pushed through, will benefit financially a lot of money over a long period of time. So what they're doing basically is they're setting themselves up for nice little comfy nest eggs in their later years. So they've got that current money coming in. You know, the taxpayer funds it, the taxpayer pays for it all, but those profits go elsewhere. They don't come back into the system. And when they say a leaner system, what they mean is they will cut back. You will have less nurses. You will have less. The waiting lists will go up because there'll be less people to be able to do the job. You know, the money will be funneled off elsewhere into private corporations. You know, shareholders and people on boards and direct board of directors. It's just a complete sham. Sham.
In the UK, maybe we should do this for people listening outside of the United Kingdom. There's a national health service, which is the NHS, that's state-owned and financed through tax. Where
you pay a fixed fee out of your wages. A percentage of your wages goes towards
where pretty much anyone, regardless of your economic status, can receive health care. For free. Well, not necessarily for free because you're paying through your taxes, but
you're paying. But I mean, it's there when you need it.
Right. Exactly. So let me. It's going to be interesting to get Ben's take on this because he worked for a hospital for 20 years, Ben, as a hospital porter, and I'm sure you have some very strong opinions on this issue. So let's hear them.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time I saw this all from the inside, and I saw it all happening, and. To me, and this has unfortunately come as no surprise for me, and it's almost the latest step in a process that actually goes back well over 30 years now. Now, the NHS was actually formed in 1947, and ever since then, from the very moment it was formed, it actually began with Winston Churchill, who was an outspoken opposition politician at the time. Ever since then, there have been moves to try and dismantle it, and in the 1960s, for example, this is when the government at the time, which was a Labour government, incidentally, brought in charges for dentists, for spectacles, for false teeth, things like that. Now, it was only with the election of Margaret Thatcher, or selection of Margaret Thatcher, that the agenda really took, gained speed, and she introduced a number of reforms which were devastating to the National Health Service, including the privatisation of certain services, opting out of various local authority controls, which was the first step towards them being taken over by private companies, which is what's happened. And then, of course, all through that era, everyone said, well, let's just wait until Labour get into power again. Then everything is going to be fine. If only we just wait until they get into power. And, of course, Labour did get into power again in 1997, and they did not only did they fail to reverse the former Conservative Party policies that have been in place since 1979, they accelerated them and added some of their own. In fact, Tony Blair's government, went into areas in terms of, private finance initiative and things like this, which Margaret Thatcher wouldn't dare touch. They're bringing in companies like Carillion PLC to basically build hospitals and then basically mortgage the entire government. In incredible. I mean, the loan. What happened was the private financial initiative was, I think, is designed to bankrupt the whole system because they were basically lending the government. They lent the government in £700 million to rebuild, to build a new extension to the John Radcliffe Hospital, and also, renovate some of the existing areas. And it was a 30-year loan at 33% APR. Now, I mean, if you do the figures, that is an absolute rip-off, and no one in their right mind would dare touch any kind of loan like that. But the government got it. And what they basically meant is that the Exchequer is basically bankrupted to companies like Carillion and various other, and Molem and various other organisations, private companies, like this Circle Health that Reeves has brought up. And this is crazy because all along, right? I mean, they're not pretending anymore now, but I mean, for all the time, right through from the 1980s through the 1990s, they always promised every single time. In fact, David Cameron said this in his last election manifesto. We are not going to privatise the National Health Service. This is simply streamlining. It's simply opening up the service to more competitive areas. They use any kind of euphemism or any kind of fob off they could think of. Apart from saying, we want to privatise it. We've wanted to privatise it ever since 1947, and we're going to bloody do it. But they won't say that because they know the people will rebel. And what's more, they could have done this right from the start. They could have gone along with Winston Churchill and just reversed that policy. But they won't, because the NHS is a very, very popular institution. It's a much loved institution in this country. So they do it slowly, a little bit at a time, so people don't notice it.
They don't notice.
I'm looking back now thinking, how the hell did we come this far? How has been happening?
See, all of these changes, and you see this not just in the United Kingdom. You see them in the U.S. You see them in every country on the planet. All of these changes that affect the majority of the people are done to benefit the few. So the reason they're doing this is basically to benefit them, right? The 1%. This is all done to make things better for them and not for everyone else. You see this constantly. All of these, we're going to have to cut back here and do this and change this and all that. And they're doing that to streamline it. So they're streamlining it so it's less effective for the people, but more effective for them to make more money.
I've worked out, right, because if they cut 20 billion off the National Health Service budget, 20 billion pounds in 2011, at the rate they're going at the moment, they've cut another 15 billion. Within 10 years, the NHS is going to start owing the Exchequer money. That's how it's going. I mean, it's absolutely insane.
It's crazy.
And then what will happen then, when it gets to that point, what they'll do, just have a blanket. It'll just become all private, and everyone will have to have a set medical insurance policy to get any health care. To get any health care for free, you have to go to a local clinic and wait your turn.
That's
exactly
what's going. That's where the way it is over here.
Yeah, and that's what they planned right from the start. For at least 45 years, they've been planning this.
So the way it works over here is that if you have medical insurance through your job or whatever, then you will get very good care, right? But
you still have to copay.
Well, yeah, for the you
There's
do.
Still a percentage you have to pay out of your pocket.
Exactly. Yes, you do. So say they'll cover 80 to 90%, and then you pay the rest. Right.
Yeah.
And you see that pretty much on what your copay is going to be. So they'll cover the vast majority of the chunk of change you got to pay, and then whatever's left over you'll have to pay. So, but I mean, if you go in for an operation, you're talking what, $200,000, maybe $300,000 to have the operation, right? So let's just say, for argument's sake, they charge you $300,000 to have whatever operation you got to have done. So your insurance will take care of 90% of that, but you still got to pay the rest.
Yeah. And if you're working on the breadline and you can just afford your insurance policy and put some food in your mouth, there's no way you can afford to pay that $25,000 they want.
Right.
And of course, if you're generally in good health, your premiums will be low because you'll be assessed as insurance risk. Just like if you're driving a car and you have points on your license. But if you develop, for instance, arthritis or diabetes or any other form of long-term health problem, your premium is going to start going up.
Yeah,
you'll start paying more for your insurance.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Yes, and
sooner or later you'll be effectively an insurance write-off, and the insurance company will say, "Get lost. We're not going to cover you anymore."
Paying for insurance which doesn't actually fully cover you.
But the thing is, see, the way this benefits, it benefits doctors and nurses and the whole health industry because they make lots and lots of money.
Yeah.
If you're a doctor or a surgeon in the United States, you're making anywhere between $300,000 to $600,000 a year, right? So you're making an extremely good living as a doctor. I don't know whether that's the same if you work for the NHS in the UK.
Oh, no, it is not. It's the exact opposite. If you the NHS, because it's a state-controlled system, we're all government servicemen, which means that you get a wage or salary from the government, which is paid to you via the NHS budget. Now, you're not paid you don't get paid according to the kind of work you do. You get your flat salary, whether you're a heart surgeon doing putting in an experimental artificial heart, or you're just fixing someone's arteries, in their doing a standard coronary artery.
So I mean, we have no inside knowledge here. We're just throwing numbers out there that might be very accurate or not. But let's just say that in the UK, if you're a doctor, you're making $60,000 a year.
Yeah, you get a good salary for a doctor. Now, if you're a nurse. Nurses in Britain are paid considerably less than nurses in many other countries in the developed world, and a lot of British nurses go and work abroad. Right, but
if you're living in the UK, £60,000 a year, that's a decent salary, right?
A decent wage.
Yeah.
If you're making £60,000 a year, that's the equivalent of like a little over $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
So it's not a fortune, but you can live well, right, with that kind of money.
Yeah.
So if you're a doctor and you're pulling in $60,000 a year in the UK, you're doing okay, right? You're not making money hand over fist, but then again you're not wondering where the next meal is going to come from. But then if you change the health industry and you make it for profit, you're going to triple your salary as a doctor overnight.
Well, 25 years ago, when all the private healthcare systems started to come into practice, Bupa and places like that, they poached a lot of the top doctors, surgeons and nurses away from the NHS to go and work for them.
Yeah.
And a lot of the hospitals now have private wings that only are for private patients. And a lot of the nurses that were ex-NHS now work for the private organisations.
Well, they've done it at the John Radcliffe. Yeah.
And it makes sense. I mean, if I'm a doctor making $60,000 a year in the NHS, and then I get this job opportunity where I can make £300,000 a year doing the exact same job for some snooty fucking hospital somewhere, guess what? Later, I'm going. Bye.
Yeah. Well, this actually happened at my hospital, at John Radcliffe. There was a bit of trouble over it actually, because what happened was a hospital belonging to what's called the Nuffield Group, which is a private healthcare company. They set up a hospital on the site of an old football ground, a soccer as you call it in America, right next door to the John Radcliffe. And what's happened, these people from that hospital were sneaking in from the Nuffield Group. They're actually coming into the hospital, and they were basically trying to poach staff from the John Radcliffe. And they got in a lot of trouble. But I'll tell you what, I mean, really, it was really completely superfluous, because as soon as that hospital opened, the staff at the John Radcliffe, especially the medical and the nursing staff, were already sniffing around it before the spies even got in there.
It's more money, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they managed to poach the nurse who was a sister in cardiac surgery at the John Rad. She was actually over there in no time. She's now head of nursing at that hospital.
Making a ton of money, right? Gotta be.
She's earning more than twice what she was as cardiac sister in the John Radcliffe. I mean, like you said, who can blame them?
Absolutely.
No, I don't blame them.
So when they move from the current healthcare model to a private, industry business model, it's going to benefit everyone except the people, except the customers of the hospital.
It's going to exactly, because as we just discussed, the first thing you're going to have to do is we'll have to bring out a medical insurance system.
Right. So
everyone
wins except the people.
Yeah, I can make a prediction actually. Now, firstly, I mean, when you say everyone wins, I mean I think doctors and nurses and some other PAMs, professions allied to medicine, they'll do well out of it. Ancillary staff like porters and cleaners will not. I mean, the porters at this private hospital, the Manor Hospital, are paid the same, basically, as we are at the John Radcliffe. Now, but my prediction is that I think that the NHS is actually being set up. It's being so mismanaged, and it's been put into such serious debt, such levels of debt, that I think it's going to be designed to collapse. I mean, at the moment, it's already rotten. It's rotten with corruption. It's rotten with poor service. You know, the NHS staff are at their wits' end. I mean, nurses are now one of the most likely people in the world to commit suicide.
Let me ask you a quick question, Ben. I just had a question in the chat room from Rob. He says to ask Ben about the E111.
Yeah, E11 it's actually a medical insurance form which British citizens take with them when they go abroad. Along with your passport, you take your E11 medical form, which means if you need medical treatment while you're on holiday, the E11 insurance, which is a free insurance, which you just sign a form and you take it out, doesn't cost you anything, will cover the expense of being treated abroad.
Right.
That's what it is. But I mean, that's the thing about it is, I mean, of course, insurance in the system we're talking about. Well, it won't be like E111. It's going to be you're going to have to pay for it. Like we've just been saying, it won't be free.
Right.
It's and the E11 is basically an extension of the NHS abroad into other countries' health services. Basically, the government is saying they're pledging to cover these people's expenses while they're abroad,
So
British citizens abroad.
But what about like immigrants coming into the country? They're not going to be able to get medical help anymore, right?
Ah, yeah. Well, this comes back to exactly what we were talking about a little while ago in the Queen's speech. This is being used as this is the dirty trick that's being used to sweeten the pill, to wrap up Big Brother in nicely coloured ribbon. They're saying that the moment we have a problem of what's known as healthcare tourism, which means people are coming to Britain simply to get medical treatment on the NHS and going back. I mean, I'm sure some Americans do this, and I don't blame them if they don't have insurance. You know, it's cheaper to go to Britain and get treatment there. But this, of course, is actually not allowed. It's against the law to do that technically. So what they're going to do is they're going to say they need a bit more stringent checks to make sure that NHS patients are entitled to the care they're going to receive, which means there's going to need to be some sort of database, basically,
right,
where people are going to have to show their visas or they're basically the documentation that proves they're entitled to NHS treatment. And of course, everyone in Britain is going, yeah, those immigrants are going to have to show their visas. Those immigrants will have to prove their identity. Immigrants are going to be asked a lot of tough questions. What they don't realise when they're saying that is it's not just immigrants; it's all of us.
Everyone.
All of us are going to be affected by this.
Yeah.
And this is another case of what David Icke very eloquently calls problem, reaction, solution.
Right.
They want to bring in an unpopular policy. They make it popular by making it be perceived as a solution to a problem, and people will embrace it.
So
when they will otherwise reject it.
Bottom line is the NHS's days are numbered. It's
definitely, unless
it's going to go. It's going to go away.
With the current governments we have, yes,
it's going to go away. I mean, you can see it. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's going to go away and be replaced by a system that's very, very similar to the system that's currently in place in the United States, where you're going to need insurance to get treatment.
Yeah, if people have woken up, I think maybe if 30 years ago or so, when this first kicked off, if people had woken up and they'd seen what was going on, they could have understood what was going on, and they hadn't believed the government's flannel, it could have been stopped then and there. But unfortunately, the government's propaganda machine was too good, and people fell for it.
You walk out in the street right now and down a local busy street, and you ask most people about the NHS and what's happening, you'll get a blank stare.
Yeah.
Most either don't care or haven't got a clue what you're on about.
Right.
I mean, what's going to happen is, I mean, unfortunately, I know I'm an optimist, and I am optimistic about many things going on in this world. I'm not optimistic about this. The system, the NHS itself, is being deliberately rigged to crash and be destroyed. Sooner or later, there's going to be a major catastrophe, right, which is going to cause the system to break down.
From its privatization will be politicians.
Sure. Well, the people who are the people who are organizing this are going to benefit enormously. I mean, like I said earlier,
ongoingly benefit.
The whole process is going to be tremendously positive for everyone involved, except the users of the system.
Yep.
What's going to happen is maybe this winter, it may be next winter, it may be during some kind of major incident like a plane crash or a train crash. There's going to be some kind of scandal in which the entire system is just going to collapse. Yeah. It might even happen nationwide at the same time. It's going to reach a tipping point and it's going to collapse. And there's basically what's going to happen is the government will step in and say they'll just say, well, right, let's just privatise the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
And we're going to be living in the world which you've just described, in which we have health insurance we have to pay for, and people are going to have to fill out forms for their health insurance.
Oh yeah,
and they're going to look back over their shoulder at the years that have passed, well, of the NHS since 1947, and they're going to think, how the hell did this happen? How I didn't vote for this.
Yeah, you got to.
How on earth have we come to this?
There's a big when you start a job here in the U.S. There's if the company offers insurance, They give you a ton of paperwork that you got to fill out to get the insurance policy. to get insured if the company offers it. And a lot of companies now are going more at part-time because the law is that if you work 40 hours or more, the company by law has to provide health insurance to their employee. So what companies do is they'll say, oh yeah, well, this week you'll work 10 hours. Next week you'll work 25 hours. So they keep they do everything they can to keep the hours that you work under 40, because as long as they keep it under 40, then they don't have to provide health insurance, which is a big expense for a company.
Yeah, I'm really gonna. I mean, I really. We're gonna be joining you basically. It's going to be like the American system over here. And
you're fine.
It was always intentional.
Don't get sick and you'll be okay. Don't worry. As long as you don't get sick, you're fine.
Just hope you don't get ill. That's all you can do.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
If you do get ill and it's quite serious, hope you die very quickly.
Yeah. Just don't get sick.
It's painless. Yeah. That's right.
Don't get sick and you're good to go. You're fine. All right. Let's change gears here. We got another kind of. I guess this should be our final story for today. This is a kind of controversial one that's been doing the rounds on YouTube like crazy, but it also made the news. So here's a clip about a kid at school who flipped out on a teacher.
A YouTube video of a Duncanville high school student giving his history teacher a lesson has gone viral, and tonight has his district talking.
If you would just get up and teach them instead of handing them a freaking packet, yo. There's kids in here who don't learn like that. They need to learn face to face. You want kids to come into your class, you want them to get excited for this, you got to come in here, you got to make them excited. You want a kid to change and start doing better, you got to touch his freaking heart. Can't expect a kid to change if all you do is just tell him.
Well, that video was posted this afternoon on our Facebook page, and Channel 8's Jason Whiteley tracked down that young man for us tonight. Jason?
I had dropped out for...
Jeff Bliss says he has no regrets.
No, not at all. I believe that somebody needed to say this.
Get up and teach them.
What he told his teacher in his world history class on Monday has now been seen around the world, gone viral.
I want to see a teacher stand up and interact with the students, get involved, discuss, talk, question, and get deep into the subject.
The 90-second video begins after the teacher at Duncanville High School kicks him out of her class. Bliss told us he initially questioned why students did not have more time to prepare for the STAR test, but then he unloads on her style, critical of her passing out worksheets rather than creating lively and engaging discussions in the classroom.
You want them to get excited for this, you got to come in here, you got to make them excited. You want a kid to change and start doing better, you got to touch his freaking heart.
Jeff's mother is a teacher, but the 18-year-old tells us he really discovered the value of education when he dropped out of school for a year.
And what I soon realized was, without that education, I'm not going to make any step forward into my future.
Bliss says he didn't know a classmate recorded that rant, but he isn't embarrassed of what he said. Duncanville ISD says it is addressing this situation, and the district reiterated it wants both students and teachers to be engaging in the classroom, but the district says it thinks that Jeff Bliss likely could have expressed his concern in a more appropriate way. Bliss tells us the principal wants to meet with him on campus here tomorrow morning. So far, he has not faced any reprimands. Reporting live in Duncanville, Jason Whiteley, Channel 8 News.
Well, we are hearing from hundreds of you reacting to Jeff's rant on our Facebook page. Tell us what you think about his outburst and the school's reaction. You can join the conversation on WFAA Channel 8's Facebook page.
So I don't know whether you guys were aware of that or saw that, but that kind of made the rounds over here where a student in the history class got so sick and tired of the lame teacher just handing out, turn to page 34, and then just, staring at their desk for 2 hours while everyone read silently or whatever, that he finally flipped out and told the teacher what the hell they're doing wrong. And I thought it was awesome that the
great.
kid
I mean, it's
went
nice
off
to see
on him.
someone actually saying, educate us. Don't just give us bits of paper. Educate us. Problem is, Gareth, a lot of teachers are completely as stupid as most, even stupider. They know less about world history than the actual students they're teaching. So, that the problem is that teachers aren't teachers these days.
Well,
they're just people that have given bits of paper to give to their students to say, give them that. That's what you need to give them. It's this whole pitiful education service that we have.
See, I think to be a teacher is definitely a vocation. You have to
definitely. Oh yes,
it's something that you have to feel inside you. I mean, most people are not going to be a good teacher, and unfortunately, a lot of schools are infested with teachers who just do the bare minimum. They're not into it. To them, being a teacher is the equivalent of working in a factory or working in some mindless job where you go in and kind of switch off your mind for 8 hours and do menial nonsense and then wake up at the end of the day when it's time to drive home and get on with your real life. But unfortunately, you're dealing with people, with children, with the future of the world. And this kid said some really good things, I found. What do you think of this, Ben?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can relate to this both from my own days at school, which I remember quite well, and also my daughter's education. I've got an 18-year-old daughter now who's at college studying drama. Now, I had a history teacher at school called Mr. Rogers, who was a very nice man, but his lessons consisted of him writing things up on the blackboard, and we would copy it down in our exercise books. And he just used to say, right, lesson over, take that home and learn it. And we did the Industrial Revolution, we did all that sort of stuff, all in the same way. Now, I found that very, very tedious and unstimulating. And I don't remember a single damn thing of what I learned in those lessons. It's funny enough, since I left school and my formal education ended, I've become very interested in history, and I've learned a hell of a lot about it. But I learned absolutely nothing from Mr. Rogers' lessons. Now, my daughter...
Sorry, Ben. Continue. I'll have my 2 cents.
So I won't be long. I'm just saying my daughter now, and a part of this problem, I think, is to do with something that was brought in while I was at school and is even more carefully controlled now. That's something called the national curriculum, which we have in Britain, which is basically where you Gareth, said that teachers are like people who work in a factory now. Well, actually, education, at least among children, is exactly that. It is a production line. The child goes in at the front as a preschool child. And you go through and what's happened is the teachers have to tick certain boxes when the child has been taught a certain thing. I know this because I went to my daughter's parents' evening, expecting to have a talk about my daughter as an individual, and she showed me a list of figures. She showed me 2 pages covered in figures with my daughter's name at the top and various boxes that had been ticked.
Yeah. And
I thought, what's going on here? And I said, well, these are the various modules that your daughter has covered in this particular term, and it was like. And there was various grades which were measured. It used to be just like A plus and minus, B plus and minus. It was now A7 or A8 and various different. The grading system has now been cut down into decimals and sub-decimals. And I read through this thinking, what the hell is this about? It means nothing. And it's all to do with the national curriculum, how education has become like a factory. You fill these kids' heads with information, whether they get it or not. Really is irrelevant.
What they're doing is
you kick them out at the end.
They're teaching kids what to think, not how to think.
Yes. Or remembering information which you then regurgitate onto your exam paper at the end. Which David Icke does a lecture where he talks about how it's all done through the left brain and the right brain is basically walled off. There's a diagram which shows the left brain surrounded by a wall. And, of course, all you have to do is shove it in there, hold it out, and then regurgitate it onto your paper. You pass your exams. Sure. There's very little, at least in sort of like school education, there's very little actual thought or an analytical thought required. It's about retaining information and nothing more. You don't analyze it. You don't process it. You just retain it and then just tell the examiner that you've remembered it.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Reeves, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate what Ben just said regarding being at school. I mean, I've been left school now, like all of us, for a considerable amount of time. But I do remember being at school, and I remember some teachers were incredibly excited about, I had one teacher called Mr. Gardner, and he used to teach, I think he was an English teacher, but he used to get really excited about, he used to read books and really get into it, and, and it would give us a buzz, and I had another teacher who used to teach social and economic history, the Industrial Revolution, Isambard Kingdom, Brunel, and he would be really into it and making us watch videos and telling us about it, and it would inspire us to go on these trips with him to work these old workhouses and learn about the history, and yet we had other teachers that would just sit there. Like I had a maths teacher who was like, there's the maths on the board, just work them out, and
well, that's the thing, it's like that kind of excitement is contagious.
Yeah.
So if you have a teacher or a lecturer that's very animated and passionate about the topic that they're discussing, it'll infect the audience. It'll infect the children. They'll be inspired. They'll be hanging on his or her every word.
Well, I kind of have to say that I think a lot of the reason that I look back on history now with an interest. I read about the Bristol and the pirates and all that. I think that's because looking back at those things reminds me of when I was a child, learning that kind of stuff and the inspiration that, as you just said, that spark, you get ignited with a spark.
Absolutely. Ben, you want to say something?
I wanted to add that the reason, you were just talking, you and Reeves and Gareth, you've just been talking about a kind of like the kind of education I would want, the kind of teacher I would want, the one that's sparky, the one that's charismatic and inspiring. The main problem is you teachers like that. There's just in the modern educational system, there's just no time for that anymore. Because we're not the educational system is not designed to produce thinking people. It's designed to produce robots with information, biological robots with the information they need to do whatever task they're assigned to do in society. And the teachers just don't have time. Firstly, the system is designed so that teachers have so many boxes to tick and so many targets to reach that they just don't have time to sit and try and inspire. It's a big problem.
It's a hard job, right? The classes are getting bigger. If you're a teacher and you walk into a classroom and there's like 10 kids, then you can be more passionate. You can be more involved in getting them on the same page and being excited about whatever topic you're discussing. But if you walk into a classroom and there's 60 kids, your job becomes so much harder, as opposed to dealing with 10 kids and 60 kids. And you see
25.
You see the classrooms being packed. They're sticking them all in there. It's very, very difficult to get that energy. And a lot of teachers would be kind of turned to page 34, read as a kid sitting there, you want to blow your brains out. It's like watching grass grow, right? Whereas if you have a teacher that's very animated and passionate and involved and asking questions, well, what do you think about this? Why do you think that happened? Then it's going to engage them and they're going to be involved and get more out of it. But it's very difficult when you have a classroom which is built for 30 but actually has 60 kids crammed in there,
Yeah. I think back to my my school days, and especially my teenage school days. Fantastic. I really enjoyed them. We never really had major, large classrooms, maybe 25, 30 pupils in a class. But, we never had like loads of homework. We had homework, but it wasn't like horrendous. But I think a lot of the problem is maybe in 20 or 30 years' time you'll have when your child is born, you'll have an education package you can buy. And there'll be certain tiers of education that you'll have to buy one for your child, and he'll go through a certain, education system, whether you've got a lot of money or not. I suppose you've got that today with private schooling, but it'll be like like the health service. You'll have to pay to get seen. Everything is made to. Everything seems to be today to be put into a self-destruct mode, so it destroys itself.
Well, what it's doing is it's weeding out the thinkers to the non-thinkers, right? It's just like if you're a free spirit and you're a thinker and you're rational and you critically think and ask questions, or if you're a non-thinker and you just absorb the information and go with it and don't question it, you're probably going to do well. All right.
Yeah.
You're probably going to be quite successful because, success as we view success in Western society, success is a byproduct of control. In other words, if you act the way society wants you to act, if you do the things that society wants you to do, then you will, by definition, be successful. If you don't, then you won't. So by definition, the people that are doing well in society are doing so because they're following the rules and playing the game. They're succumbing to the control mechanism.
Mm. It's the carrot and stick. If you do well, you will be rewarded. The system will reward those who are obedient. For those who are not obedient, there are all kinds of different ways.
Exactly.
Of either bringing them into line or destroying them.
Right. Exactly. And that's the environment that we live in.
It starts with bullying. They can use bullying at schools. I think bullies are quite useful actually in schools, for dealing with kids like that. But then there's other methods as well. There's making sure that person doesn't get into a high position of power and authority.
Right.
I've never, in all the time I've had several jobs, portering of course being the longest term. I've never ever become anything more than a basic grade of any job I've ever done. I've never even been a supervisor or foreman over anybody else.
Well, I've seen this in many positions I've worked at, whereas if you have an employee that's a pain in the ass, that you don't get along with, that you can't work with them, but you can't fire them, what you do is you promote them.
Yes.
Right? You promote them so that they're out of your hair. You get rid of them. You say, oh, we'll promote you to manager of this department or whatever, So then you can breathe a sigh of relief. So you don't have to deal with them or, deal with their nonsense. Mm. You promote them out.
You make them up. Then if they're crap at their job, but they're still willing to to serve the system, they can still get promoted.
Sure.
They don't promote people who are good at the job, and they certainly don't promote people who won't serve the system.
Yeah.
No. People often used to say to me when I was a porter, they said, well, how come you're still a basic grade after all these years? And I said, you obviously have such strong views on portering about how to run a portering department properly. You have all the knowledge and experience and training to run a portering department properly. Ben, why have you not become head porter? And my reply was, because I know that if I ever became head porter, I wouldn't last a week in the job. They'd get rid of me because the changes I would want to make would be completely unacceptable to the system.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. All right, then, guys, I think we should wrap it up for this week. We've had some great show, some great discussions, as per usual on the Mindset Podcast. But let's do the rounds here and see where everyone can be discovered. Ben, where can you be found on the internet?
Hapanwo, Hospital Porters Against the New World Order.
Any new videos coming out?
I've put a new one up last week. Actually, I'm generally doing about one a week at the moment because of my workload. But I put a new one up, which is quite good. I won't be here for next week's show. I'm afraid I'm going to have to miss it because I'm going to go away to the Megalithomania conference, which should be fun. When I come back, I'll have a
report
about that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Let's see, Reeves, where can you be found?
Mindset Central, Paratalk, and Paranormal.info.
Have you updated that site yet?
I've got an interesting story that's going on there shortly.
Excellent.
Just putting the finishing touches to it, like a nice cake.
Very good. And I'm assuming our listeners are asking where the rest of the gang is, but unfortunately they couldn't make it this week, but no doubt they will be back next week. All right, well, thank you so much for listening, guys. We really appreciate it, and we will be back next week with more topics, more stories, and more conversation. And until then, farewell, good brothers.